Michael, called Mike for short, is the only child of a couple who run a motel called the Kingsman Inn. He does nothing useful all day and takes over management in the night when his parents leave. One day, a beautiful woman, Susan, lodges into the motel and Mike immediately develops an interest in her. As soon as his parents leave for the night, he heads to Susan's room with a bottle of champagne. Mike lies that the champagne is a welcome gift from the motel on the first night, so Susan allows him in to pop the champagne and pour it into a cup for her. He inquires about her job, and Susan tells him she sells paintings and her company's headquarters is in Maryland. The conversation is quite awkward, so it also ends awkwardly and Susan successfully sends Mike out of her room. The next night, Mike does the exact same thing. This time, he lies to Susan that management gives champagne again when people spend 2 nights, and Susan notices that he is after something else when he compliments her butt. She allows Mike touch her butt a little, so that it will be a win for him. By the next morning, Susan is fully packed and ready to head back to Maryland. Mike tries to get her contact details, but she refuses to give them. But as she sits in the car, she changes her mind and heads into the back of the motel to meet Mike in the laundry room. They kiss passionately and get really intimate, then she immediately leaves for Maryland. What may have started as a mild attraction, turned into a deep attraction, because Mike finds himself booking a one-way ticket to Maryland to find someone he knows nothing about. He is able to trace Susan to her workplace, and she is really surprised and irritated to see him. When Mike finds out she is going for a basketball game with friends, he offers to go with her and ends up joining the game. Again he offers to help her sell the vouchers as she always did in the night. And when it gets late, they sleep in the same house, but not on the same bed. When Susan wakes up, she is shocked to find out that Mike didn't book a return ticket and wouldn't be leaving that day because he didn't have the money. She is pissed off, but Mike asks her to take the day off, so they can hang out a little bit, and he manages to convince her to do so. They play the entire day, take a walk, and Mike tells Susan he likes her because she has style and is beautiful on the inside. By that evening, his return bus ticket has been booked and sadly for him, he has to leave. They say their goodbyes with Mike asking if he will ever see her again. Back in the motel, Mike leaves her messages for days, but never gets any response, until Susan suddenly shows up one evening at the motel. She claims she has business in the area for a day and is lodging there. They go for yoga together and end up having dinner at a restaurant. Mike asks Susan if she has a boyfriend, what her dream job is and if she would want kids. Susan has an ex-boyfriend named Django, who is a punk rock star, and they broke up when he moved to another place for a business purpose. She would love to run a state-of-the-art kitchen that has basketball and a suite, and would love to have kids. Mike then takes Susan to meet his mother, who is sick and dying. His mother likes Susan immediately, but is concerned about Mike, who has nothing to do for himself. The next morning, Susan packs out of the motel and tells Mike that they can't work it out. After that he tries to convince her to stay. Shortly after Susan leaves, Mike's mother dies. When Mike and his father are spreading her ashes, Mike's father informs him that he wants to sell the motel. He also asks Mike to go and do whatever he wants to, and hands over a necklace Mike's mother wanted Mike to have. Mike pawns the necklace for $300, and heads to Maryland to look for Susan, but is surprised to hear she quit her job because her ex-boyfriend Django had come pleading for forgiveness with flowers. Django and Susan are now residing in Aberdeen, and Mike heads straight there to find her irrespective of the fact that she is back with her ex-boyfriend. He has nowhere to stay, so he sleeps in fields and pastes posters of a drawing of Susan, asking if anyone has seen her. Tired, he ends up in a restaurant and meets Al, the son of the owners of the restaurant, who is nice to him. Al offers him a job at the restaurant, and as they talk, Mike finds out that Al knows Django. So Al takes Mike to Django's residence, but they can't just go in because of the number of dogs Django has and the kind of person he is. Soon, Al comes up with a very crazy plan that Mike decides to go with. With the aid of an expert, Mike parachutes into the swimming pool of Django's apartment. Susan is surprised to see him, But Django fires at the intruder and Mike ends up in the hospital out of shock. When he wakes up at the hospital, he is happy to see Susan, who questions his presence in Aberdeen. He confesses his feelings for her, but Susan claims Django has changed. He even put her in charge of a part of his business. Out of guilt and as an act of apology, Django invites Mike to the house for dinner. Al accompanies Mike, and they talk about Django's work, and Susan lies that Mike is a fellow painter. At the end of the dinner, Al invites Susan to a club he would be going to with Mike. And she eventually shows up without Django, who is drunk. Mike and Susan enjoy the night and dance at the club. The next day, Django shows up at the restaurant where Mike works, punches him in the face, and asks him to stay away from Susan. But Mike and Al head to Django's place and play a love song from downstairs, which only Susan hears because Django is on headphones. So he gets a surprise visit from Susan. Unfortunately, she gives him the worst news of his life. She will be getting married to Django the coming Saturday, and she is already pregnant with Django's child. Mike still asks Susan to marry him instead, but she describes him as an unguided missile and says she can't be with someone who doesn't know what he is doing with his life. Mike talks about the fact that she is too selfless, and never lives for herself. Seeing that nothing can be done, he asks her in tears to leave his place. True to her word, Susan marries Django on Saturday and Mike watches from afar with Al, who he now calls his best friend. Al playfully talks about being a Buddhist monk, but Mike takes it seriously and goes on to become one, while Susan and Django live as a married couple. After some time, one of the Buddhist monks talks lovingly to Mike and informs him that he cannot truly be a monk because he has not dealt with some emotions that have him stuck. So, Mike heads back home to meet his dad and pawns a keyboard to get his mother's necklace back. His dad gives him the deed of agreement of the motel, which makes him the new owner of the motel. One day, he gets a letter from Susan, telling him that he was right about the last talk they had, and she is now a changed person. Mike calls Django and asks to talk to Susan. He is surprised when Django tells him that he and Susan split up and Susan went to stay at her mother's place. Mike heads there immediately to meet Susan, and she seems excited to see him. She apologizes because she messed up with him, but Mike still confesses his feelings for her. He shows her the deed for the motel and talks about his plans to turn it into a homeless shelter with a basketball area and a suite. Mike tells Susan he needs her help on it, and all he wants is to be with her. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification, so you can watch more videos like this. Till next time.